when we talk about patriarchy harming men and men's loneliness and all that stuff, this story so well explains why men need to get on board with this. This dude was responsible for his own son dying. And this is not an uncommon story, but I want to talk about one certain aspect about this dude being on his phone, making bets on a basketball game while his child was out by the pool unsupervised for 10 minutes and he had his back to the pool. Now, I didn't even know who these people were until this tragedy. And this isn't a deep dive on them. I'm going to go over a couple things, but I really want to talk about gambling and how if men are lonely now. Let's just wait and see what happens, because the way that men are being targeted by the gambling industry, the gaming industry, all of their problems are going to be so much worse than they already are. And of course, they impact women and children the most. When men are not doing okay because they are doing reckless things, including addictions like gambling or other addictions, the family that relies on this man are always harmed the most. And this is a perfect case of it, because this dude was playing sports on his phone while his child was fighting for his life for 7 minutes in that pool. And this was her first time going out with friends, first time after having a baby. And she was gone like 30 minutes, not far away at a taco place for a girls' night out kind of thing. It was my understanding. And the dog is the one that realized this child was drowning. It took the dog. The dog noticed. Dad did not. Now, I want to just hit on a few things, like the fact, like, I'm glad that she got some of this redacted, even though she is an influencer and she's been putting her children out on the internet for everyone to follow. And now this tragedy, but I'm glad that she won some privacy in this situation because of AI and what people would use with AI to recreate the worst thing that she'll hopefully ever go through. Like, there's so many factors in this story that we've been talking about for a long time. The fact that the mothers are afraid to leave their children with their kids' own father because they're not trustworthy, they're not reliable, unless they have a whole lot of experience with kids and actually listen to their wives in terms of what are the potential risks. Because we know men's risk assessment, unless they actually have a whole lot of emotional intelligence and are like deconstructing this hubris that they have, that they are know-it-alls and that they are the head of household and protector, when really they're the ones who endanger their kids the most. And I say this as a former whitewater raft guide and outdoor adventure guy. And if you know my work, I constantly tell you, do not trust men in the wilderness, and you can't even trust them in their own home with their own child. And this is about patriarchy, because even though there's individual factors at play here, but this is a collective conditioning of men to either A, not be involved at all, or barely be involved, and they're babysitting their own kid. But even if they're super active parent, that overconfidence, that cockiness, that they're not the ones reading all these books. Some of them are. Some of them, I know some of these dads, but in general, they are not taught to I don't know, look up what it research what you're going to go through to parent. So they are just so unaware of all the ways their child could die on a regular basis, because they just think that it'll all work out. You worry too much, like all this stuff, and that's a whole nother thing. But this mother will be blamed for having a net instead of of course people are going to be like, why didn't she have this? Why did she leave him alone with him? All these things are always going to blame the mom. No matter what dad does, they'll always blame that mom. Imagine the first time you leave your children after giving birth, leave both your children with your husband and under the watchful eye of 4 million TikTok fans, and the first time that 3-year-old drowned. This is how patriarchy and that entitlement. The same thing with whiteness. If you don't know what I'm talking about, follow White Woman Whisperer. She will help you connect the dots between patriarchy and whiteness. Patriarchy and whiteness, the same way that men are conditioned to center themselves and be the default and have just this really twisted way of looking at the whiteness does that to us as well. And even the people who benefit from these systems, even men who benefit enormously from patriarchy, having the promise of power and money and being able to control and dominate everybody else, especially if they're cishet white men, especially. What you lose is access to your humanity. What you lose is close relationships with your own children, with people you love or want to love. because you're in your own way. The conditioning is in your way. And then something like this happened. And it is because of a lot of factors, but one of them is the escapism of men constantly needing to feel good and just escape, escape, avoid, escape, escape. That entitlement that comes with that much privilege of just constantly looking for the next fix, constantly putting whatever you want at the center of everything, whether it is betting on a dumb game or even watching a dumb game instead of watching your child. The one time you are left alone with both of them. What I want to talk about in this video more, after I go over a few details, is how these systems are preying on men. Don't y'all care? They're preying on you. You already are like so cut off from your own humanity because of this, all of this entitlement and the violence of patriarchy. And now you got a gambling addiction to add to that. So you're women aren't going to trust you with money. This is going to cause divorces. This is going to cause like kids to never want to have anything to do with dad because he is untrustworthy, because he has a gambling addiction, because these corporations have made it so that it is ridiculously easy to give away all your family's money on your phone while you're watching a game. Just tap, 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 dopamine, dopamine, dopamine. Meanwhile, like the resources of the whole family gone. Who does men's gambling addiction affect the most? Unless they are literally totally self-sufficient, don't have anyone in their lives that they love, they live with, they depend on for anything, it hurts the women and kids the most, because those traditionally are the ones who rely on men who still hoard wealth and have more access to wealth usually than their wives do, unless they're a homosexual, in which case they're just spending all her money. So let's go over a few things, and then I want to get into the gambling part. I've been meaning to make this video for a while, and I actually have like a lot to say about it, but I want to talk about the way, I mean, this guy was 28, so he's not quite in the window of the most targeted men for gambling. And by the way, I am not excusing his behavior, like, oh, poor guy, you know, he's got advertisers trying to convince him to gamble all the time. But I do want to say that, you know, just because, yes, this was an individual decision, but this is a systemic thing. And a bunch of these tech bros with endless amounts of money are making so much money off of exploiting men and boys, which then impacts women and children more, because again, they tend to be more dependent on these men, especially now that women are losing their jobs at record time. Like this douche, and all of these douches, these CEOs who want you to be back in the office, that is targeted to women, because a lot women are the ones who benefited from being able to work at home, because they end up being the default parent a lot of times, because men refuse to actively parent their own children. And specifically black women in the United States, 300,000 black women, and stop doing this, have left the labor force. Stop it. Oh, they just left. They were like, bye, as if that was a choice, and they weren't pushed out by government layoffs and all of the stuff going on right now. So women, especially mothers, women with disability, women who are caretaking someone else, possibly a parent, whatever. Like there's a lot of, but women are the ones who are gonna be affected the most by this, right? And then who always gets it the worst in the US? Black women. Everything that happens to women in the US is always going to impact black women like 100 times worse because of our legacy of doing that. Before I get to the gambling part, I want to point out that, you know what, even though Emilie may have been trying to protect her husband, I do believe that this is a very good reason for her to get some of these details hidden from the public, because we're not owed every detail. She believed that with the police report was so detailed, she was afraid of, and I'm sure there's, I wouldn't want all the details of this out there, so I get it. But you know, this is what people have to worry about now. That the media sleuths would create AI recreations that would go viral, and that absolutely would happen. I have already seen an AI generated BS thing of her saying she's leaving her husband, and there's no way that was like their lips don't even match the word, because apparently people did this with the quadruple, like, so she said she was worried about that, which I get. AI is terrifying, and please stop using ChatGPT and all that generative stuff. We're gonna die from it. That's another video. Oh, but police had a moment by moment written depiction of the officer body cam footage, and just like it was, you know, the vivid details. She didn't want that out there, and I get it. Again, she probably wants her privacy around this tragedy, and I get it. I don't agree with mom influencers doing this to their children. I think we're gonna have a reckoning with that, but I also don't think anyone, no matter like influencer or not, I, I feel like people have a problem respecting the privacy. I mean, I'm not an influencer. I don't even have that many followers, and it scares me how much people want from me. By having that stuff redact, I agree with this. It was probably an appropriate balance between transparency and human dignity. So, just for some more detail before I get into the gambling aspect, Brady Kiser, her husband, and Trigg's dad, was up for felony child abuse charges and a possible loss. And, seems like he lied, when he was first asked. Now, I will say this as somebody who's dealt with a lot of people in crisis and having like shock, not always the best narrators in those moments. And you never know how you are going to respond to an emergency, including me. I was really good with other people's emergencies, but my own, I was shocked at how certain situations I completely froze, even though when I was at a job doing that kind of stuff, like I've watched, you know what, the reason why this case, I don't care about these influencers, but every time there's a drowning, I can't help but read up on it because I've seen 3 people die in my life. 3 people by drowning right in front of me, 2 at work, and then 1 on vacation last summer. And I just know a lot about water and all of this stuff as a former whitewater raft. So, he could have lied because he just couldn't think straight or whatever. But also, it seems like there's an element of him trying to cover up a lot. Because when the police asked him about like what happened, he said, I don't know the exact time, but it was moment. It wasn't minutes, it was moment. It wasn't, that he'd been out of sight for long. But when they checked the cameras, the surveillance, he'd been outside for 10 minutes and in the water for 7. And this is the part that kills me. Brady was watching an NBA playoff, and his cell phone data showed that he had placed a bet on the game and that his statements around this stuff did not match the video surveillance footage. And the cover, by the way, for those who haven't read on this, they had a pool cover kind of thing, some net thing, and it wasn't on because they'd been swimming and they had somebody was going to come clean the pool or something the next day or service the pool. Sorry. And even though Trigg had had swim lessons, he only minimally knew how to swim. But as this news outlet says, an influencer's husband allegedly placed a $25 bet before his son's fatal drowning because his attention was divided. And as somebody who used to be a nanny, like having 2 kids at once is overwhelming, but the baby can't move. It's the toddler, the one who can walk and run, that you have to keep a very close eye on. You have to make sure the baby if you have to put them in the right position because to not block airways, take care of their neck. You don't just lay them on something so they can roll off of. But in general, you got to watch the toddler. But Dad was distracted. Dad was distracted by a bet and by a game. And I also, as somebody who had a father who all I really remember of my entire life with him is watching him watch football. There's so many dads are like this. And now with online betting on your phone, it's going to get so much worse. So he placed a $25 bet on some betting platform, DraftKings, at 5:14, 75 minutes before Trigg was spotted outside by security camera. Well, I guess he won. He won $102.50. So the son fell into the water at 6:32 p.m. and Dad didn't notice until 6:39. And the dad said to police that he'd only been outside for maybe 5 minutes. He's interviewed more than once. I don't have a clock, obviously. I don't know the exact time, but it was moments. It wasn't minutes. It was moments. It wasn't that long that he'd been out of sight for long. That was the first interview. And he didn't even know what his son had been doing. He had no idea. His back was to like he was what? My understanding, and I can't find the photo, was that he was sitting in a chair or something that was facing the TV and not outside. And the only reason why he knew that there was a problem at all is because he just happened to look outside after 10 minutes and saw the dog looking in the pool, and it had a poor feeling as soon as I saw it. It was out of the ordinary to see him standing there looking in the water as he was. So I had stood up and I immediately went out there. So investigators say that the death was a result of him playing in the backyard unsupervised in an unsecured pool, all the while he wasn't able to swim, really. But even if that kid could swim, this could still happen. The report states, I asked Brady what he thought happened, and he said, I think just that. He was playing out back, he was wandering and playing about, and he must have slipped. I think it was an accident that he had fallen into the water, obviously, because he knows he's safe. He knows he's not supposed to go around. And this is that hubris right here. Just because the kid kind of knows how to swim and knows not to go near the pool Do you think the kid can do the risk assessment of maybe I shouldn't play literally anywhere near the pool because I might trip on that? Kids can't do that. Parents are supposed to do that. That is literally their job, is to anticipate every possible thing that could kill their child. That's like literally what, like, I didn't realize till I nannied and all my friends became parents that like not just like not letting the child die is like the one of the biggest parts of parenting, because they almost die all the time if you don't watch them. At least he wasn't under the influence of alcohol or drunk, but he was under the influence of gambling. And before I get into the gambling part, well, this is a tragedy. This is a terrible thing that has happened to this family. It wasn't an accident. This was negligence. This was letting your child be in harm's way, putting your child in harm's way by choosing to gamble on your phone and watch a dumb game instead of doing the one thing that you're supposed to be doing, because you're home alone. You're supposed to be doing this all the time. Again, women tend to be the default parent and don't trust their husbands with their own children. And then stories like this come out and it's like, well, yeah, no wonder. But now let's talk about how young men and even young fathers, or not even young. I think this is affecting all men. Okay, not all men, but it's targeting all men. And like I say all the time, whatever harms men is going to harm children and women attached to those men, or supporting those men, or somehow like dependent on those men. It's going to hurt them way more than the men, unless the men literally die. But even in that case, what women are left to clean up, not physically, although sometimes, because they usually, if they take their own life, die in horrific ways, and are like oftentimes not even thoughtful about how they do that. But it's always women left to clean up the mess. And I say this as a family member who died by unaliving himself, and we will never get over it. But we also have had to deal with it, mourn this, but also deal with the consequences of it. So this article is like a pretty great article. Betting companies are making huge amounts from from the confidence of young male customers who think they can beat the system. So all that hubris, all that overconfidence, that individualistic mindset that I'm going to do this. We say like, I wish I had the confidence of a mediocre white man. Like that is built into men, but especially the more privilege they have, like, and especially like white men, because they have the entitlement of being a man and whiteness, and are usually cushioned from the consequences of anything they do, usually by women or whoever's harmed the most. Anyway, gambling offers the false promise of spectacular success. The psyche of young men has not changed, but every societal touchstone is promoting gambling expansion. And this really, we haven't even seen the impacts of this, because this is still pretty recent. I mean, it's only 7 years ago, but we're going to see the consequences of this more and more as the statistics catch up with this. This decision in 2008 by the Supreme Court that overturned a federal law that banned states from legalizing sports bet. I mean, look what it's already done. Americans wagered $150 billion on sports, up 23% from 2023, and more than 50% from 2022. That's huge. The sports betting handle in 2024 was more than $1,000 per capita in 7 different states. So what's happening? Bankruptcies are going up. Oh, look, y'all, Mose does bark. See, rarely. Up 30% in the states where sports betting is newly legal. Gamblers Anonymous is seeing a huge uptick of young male attending. Look at this. This is horrifying, y'all. But we need to know this. I really want you to pay attention to this, especially if you date men, if you're married to men, if you're raising boys. Pay attention. A lot of them are getting into gambling addiction, and you don't even know. 60 to 80% of high school students reported having gambled in the last year. High school. Meanwhile, they're making you what? Enter your ID so that you can watch YouTube. Like they do not care about children. None of this entering your ID is about kids, but that's another video. 58% of 18 to 22-year-olds have bet on sport. On college campuses, the number is 67%, and that's the betting happened at a higher frequency. And this is a worldwide problem now. I'm going to get into the world problem in a second. 16.3% of adolescents worldwide who bet on sports developed a gambling addiction. This is, I swear to God, this is like, I think when I was a teenager or whatever, or kid, I don't know, whatever. And they finally were like, hey, maybe cigarette companies shouldn't be able to like market to children. Okay, but more importantly, the way that people are watching sport is encouraging this and normalizing. And then this, of all the addictions, gambling has the highest potential for unaliving attempts of any mental health disorder. But studies found that during an NBA or NHL broadcast, viewers will see the logo of betting company or hear reference to one made about gambling 2.8 times per minute. ESPN is a 24/7 casino ad right now, says this doctor and an addiction psychiatrist. The normalization has gone so deep, so fast. Sports gambling has gone so viral that it's beyond normalization. It's endemic. And this is the same case in France. Whenever you watch, especially like when the French, the national team is playing in like football or soccer, as we say in the US, every single commercial break, it's all about gambling. Not all that long ago, legalized sports gambling anywhere in the US, but Nevada was unthinkable, because before, gambling was a little bit more of like a secret thing. I mean, other than maybe like poker and all this, this was something, that was not normalized. It wasn't the sort of thing that you would want your mom to know about. By carpet bombing our culture with ads, the sports betting industry polished its reputation, one ad at a time. How can something be wrong when it's everywhere and seemingly everyone is doing it? And before long, everyone was doing it. By everyone, they mean young men in general. Women are not doing this at the extent men are. It's not the dough, but the dopamine. And that is one of the biggest issues. It's not even about the money. It is about exploiting the socialization of men and boys. And then if they have ADHD, or if they already are kind of like, I don't know, maybe a lot of trauma they haven't dealt with, or they have addictions run in their family. What? This is a very easy solution. And all of this is coinciding with evolution of technology. Before, in the past, there were so many barriers. You would have to go to a sports book and bet in more of a seedy environment. A college age student would have been less likely to partake in. Gambling used to be a solitary pursuit. Young men now do it together as a bonding experience. Ugh. Mobile betting is woven into the social fabric of dorm life. And as y'all, if you're new here, I wrote that article that went viral many years ago called "Men Have No Friends and Women Bear the Burden." Men have no friends, so they start gambling to connect with men. Great. This is the and the lonelier they get, the more isolated they get, because women don't want to date them because they lack emotional intelligence, or whatever, because they've been radicalized online. The more they're going to fall into gambling, not only do you have to worry about them becoming incels, now they're going to be incels with gambling addiction, and then they're going to blame women for not wanting to date them because, well, they have no money because they have a gambling addiction and they hate women. Great. And then the way that these bets are, it's no longer a wager on an outcome or a player's performance. Instead, it's been broken down into hundreds, sometimes thousands of mini bets on every last play and possibility. And that is why it's like this dad, it doesn't matter that he made a $25 bet. It's, look, this is why this industry is just so gross. The psychology of sports betting apps is modeled on the slot machine, argues this doctor. The apps are designed to be played quickly and aggressively to trigger repeated hits of dopamine and eventually addiction. This has nothing to do with ordinary sports betting. Fast food gambling is another term they call it. Like before, if you had the online sports bet, nobody ever bet on whether the next pitch was going to be faster or slower than 95 miles per hour. You're betting on all the micro positions. It's just an opportunity to push a button. And so they love people who are just like bang, 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 rather than one big bet. So that to me explains why this was such a small amount of money. Because I'm like, why the hell, what, $100? I'm not diagnosing this man with a gambling addiction. I am just using this to bring about a much bigger problem, is that gambling, like many other things, is what a lot of men are turning to, and it is hijacking their attention. Any risk assessment they may have had, which is oftentimes not much because of their socialization as men, any little bit that they had is gone because they are becoming addicted to these little hits of dopamine for all the games. And the industry is pushing this on, and this does not excuse it, but I'm trying to explain one of the things behind it. And also to help anyone out there, especially women who date men, or even if you have a brother or your dad or your son, this is going to impact you more than anybody. Pay attention. The gambling stuff is it's worse than any of us realize. And this kind of addiction can ruin your life because we need money to survive. And if these men are going broke, or they're not doing things like parenting their own children, making sure they're safe because they're checking the phone and the app and the game all the time. Fast food gambling is essentially what this is. Highly processed gambling, sanitized and synthesized by a computer that is exactly designed to hit the dopamine. It's just like these apps. Doom scrolling exhausts me because it's dopamine after dopamine after dopamine. So I'm not saying, I can easily get hijacked. My brain can by these phones and the way they're designed, and get especially things, rage bait and all that stuff. But you add that, the dopamine of phones, and what they do to us in social media, and then you add money betting on top of that, the AI powered in-game bets appear and disappear so fast that it's impossible for the user to work out whether the odds on them are worth the wager. Great. As if AI isn't doing enough things like taking jobs, like me as a writer, destroying the environment, and all these other things. Like, we're all so screwed, but they're using AI to make so that apps that were already harmful are using tactics that are just make people so reckless. And again, yeah, sure, we all have free will. We're all individual. But this is not an individual responsibility. Yes, we are responsible for what we do, but there's a reason why regulations for things exist. Why it's illegal to drive drunk. Why up until recently we had a bunch of, oversight for things like water, making sure your food's not poisoned and stuff like that. The regulations are necessary because capitalism and the corporation will do anything to make money. They prey on humans all the time. And so, but now with the power of AI, ooh, they can do what they were already going to do like 100 times better. Gambling addiction has nothing to do with money. It has to do with how the product makes you feel, the action, the anticipation. So it's not about the $102. It was about getting that dopamine hit from waiting to see, to making the bets and then anticipating the result. That's why people, they don't have to win big to keep going. It's not about the money. It's not even about the winning. It is about the dopamine hits from the game. The light up of the dopamine occurs in the anticipation of the result, not the actual result. What's happened here is we've taken a known addictive product and we've come up with a way to market and distribute it to people at light speed. And then they go into an example. If you have a 22-year-old whose risk reward system of their brain is not formed until they're 26, and you give them an addictive product and you push it at them at lightning speed, you're going to hurt them. The smartphone, meanwhile, in itself is built to function as a dopamine delivery machine. It is the perfect device to exacerbate the gambler's worst impulses. And this is why I swear, I made a video on this a while ago, but I want to keep talking about is men's relationship with their phone. They judge us for being on the phone all the time. They judge us for and so many, all right, we doom scroll, like we're on social media, blah, 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 blah. But I'm telling you, a lot of men, when they're on their phones, they are playing some dumb game that's just passing time. But a lot of times they are watching OnlyFans, or they are gambling. And even if they're not gambling a lot, they're watching sports, a lot of times not for the sport, but to gamble. And they can do it on their phones just like that. Whereas before, they had to, go to like a sketchy place a lot of times to make these bets. So of course, this is becoming a huge problem. Smartphones are designed to keep you coming back to picking them up throughout the day and flickering through the same few apps for fresh dopamine hit, either from the messages, content, or game. Betting apps really offer all of those. And once they have burrowed into your digital routine, they are hard to ignore, right? I don't know about you, but when I open up my phone, I check TikTok, I check YouTube, I check this, I check like 5 different apps. It's been usually an hour responding to all the messages on WhatsApp, but I have my routine. And if betting is in that digital routine, even if they want to stop, it's going to be really hard for them to stop because they pick up their phones all the time, unless they delete all the apps. But guess what they're doing? They are hard to ignore because they blow up your phone. People are stepping back from the mobile betting because they're hurting, said this dude. They know this is a struggle for them. And then they are provided with odd boosts and deposit matches very aggressively through text message, even in-app email. This is all designed to keep you in action. Look at this. They're doing what your neighborhood drug dealer does. They don't want you to pause. Oh, y'all, look at that. Look at that horse back there. I'm camping at a garden to avoid the insane heat right now. Anyway, they also, talk about podcasts and how they're, the podcast bros are all like responsible for pushing this crap too. And, because men who will not, and again, like, this is why you got to start young, teaching boys to not value this as how they define themselves. Oh, you got to be rich, you got to do this, you got to do that. You better work. You don't be a homosexual. But again, this is part of that indoctrination. Men have no value unless they, have a lot of money. And again, because the hatred of women is so big in this world, it's not even about like having money so that you can be a good partner if you date women. It's about having money to impress other men with your bitch. So young men are like, cool, no women are going to want me unless I have a lot of money. And this seems like the only way I can get money, because it seems like it might be really hard to get a lot of money really quick. So I'll do this. So 18 to 24-year-old guy tickling his dopamine circuit, gambling offers the false promise of spectacular success. And unlike other addictions, there are no natural visible warning signs. And because, and I talked about this in my article, Men Have No Friends, Women Bear the Burden, a lot of times the only thing men talk about is sports, especially in places like the US where there's no third spaces at all. Here in France, there's a bunch of third space associations that are very cheap to join. Like, I don't know, there's just more, but like church is the only free or cheap, because it's not free. They always make you give labor some money or donations or whatever to find community. So men are usually talking about sport, doing sport. They have no idea how to connect with other men or people in general, but especially other men, without it being centered on stupid stuff that doesn't mean anything. And I say this as a climber of a long time, where I couldn't stand hanging out with a lot of climbers because all they talked about was gear and climbing. So whether it's, this kind of sports or, outdoor sport, men tend to talk a lot about this and bond over. So now their only sense of community is linked to this crap, which is now includes betting. So great. You've got, young men or even men with children. And how do they keep up with their guy friends? Betting, even when they're looking after their children. And I really love this quote: the human brain is not built to handle that level of constant action. I don't think it's built for this level of like all of these social media stuff, but this level is next level, because the dopamine hit from gambling addictions is way bigger than a dopamine hit of me like getting a like or a comment. And so before, they used to enjoy just the sport itself, but now betting is marketed as a second screen experience to augment the emotion of watching a game. You're supposed to cherish even the so-called garbage time late in game when the outcome is almost certain. And then, of course, there's the same way that men assume they know how to parent, they know how to climb Everest or, navigate whitewater with zero experience whatsoever. They also think that they can navigate gambling just, by sheer knowledge or reading enough books. Although a lot of men will have no knowledge and still have so much confidence. But this idea that men are always trying to beat the game, that's how they date. This mentality, and this is tied to like rape culture and the colonizer mindset, right? I'm gonna conquer this mountain. I'm gonna be a player and trick all these women into sleeping with me by lying about my intention. I'm gonna be the special one that helps her let down her guard. I'm gonna be the man who can win against an online betting machine with billions of dollars behind it. Okay, bro. These apps try to get guys to think that skill and knowledge will inoculate you from risk. That if you know ball, you're not really gambling, because all that time that men waste studying stats, and I know they do this because I've listened to enough of it. My dad would do fantasy football, and I was like, oh my God, you have like spreadsheets, so many charts. Like, you know more about these football players than you know about me. The way men will talk about gear, everything about Black Diamond, this cam, that cam. Or for sports, they know everything about a player. They know everything about the stats. They study it. They won't get to know their partners or their children, but they'll know everything about the game. So now that must set them up really well to be good at gambling. They can beat the system. Although the difference between nature and women versus these big apps is that they're going up against something with way more power than these individual men have. Like, they're gonna play. It's like that's like going to a casino and thinking the house doesn't always win. Like, young male sports gamblers think their knowledge, skill, and control reduce their belief about risk and contributed to risky patterns of sports betting, regardless of their individual risk or problem gambling status. Anyway, a bunch of articles referenced this big study done by Lancet.com, and it was also featured in that Guardian article I just read. What's really not surprising, but so gross, is that the gaming industry, they always try to stress the social benefits that accrue with some portion of gambling profits. Like, they're used to fund education, health services, or other worthwhile social causes, right? The tax dollars, man. And that any of the bad stuff, any of that's all because of the individual. Oh, and by the way, the gaming industry also exerts considerable influence over research into gambling and gambling harm, which helps it retain control over the framing and messaging surrounding these issues. And so what happens? Whenever they talk about the harm, it's always about the individual, which is why, yes, the individual is a part of it. Just like an addict it has free will. To only focus on the individual, especially in a patriarchy where men consider themselves head of the household, a lot of them are financially abusing their wives, or like don't even let wives have access to the money, and then the children are also dependent on them, and then you do all this unregulated so that men will just blow their money away too easily through this addiction, and just be like, well, it was his choice. There's nothing we can do about it. We definitely couldn't regulate it like we did cigarettes, where, in Europe, actually not just Europe, they do this in Chile and Argentina, like pretty much most of the countries I've been to, they have the most disgusting photos on the cigarette pack. I don't really know if they have any impact, but they changed the advertising. Before, they're just, the advertising around cigarettes was very friendly. Now, at least in a lot of countries, they literally put the most disgusting photo, or like like one's even like, hey guys, your is going to be limp, So advertising, regulation, all of this stuff plays into it. So it is not just an individual problem. And also, gambling can heighten the risk of unaliving oneself and, shocker, domestic violence. Because if a man is broke, and he's lost everything and whatever, he's got an addiction to gambling, we know that the addiction doesn't cause domestic violence, but it definitely is accelerated. It affects crime, health effects, broken relationships, employment, financial ruin. Like I said, all these things will impact any woman or children tied to not just the women, because I am sure that there's plenty of addiction in, gay couples who have children or not. But we can't ignore the fact that women don't get paid as much, and especially the more marginalized, the less they get paid in relation to men. And so in this system, women and children are going to get screwed if the person with access to money or control over the money has a gambling problem. Anyway, I don't know. I haven't seen any takes about that part of it. And I've been wanting to talk about the gambling addiction stuff for a while. But in general, patriarchy, it hurts everybody, literally everybody. But I wish men understood how much they're getting screwed by this thing that gives them access to more power, gives them all these like things that seem great. You don't know what true love is, because you can't really love someone you're exploiting, especially if you knowingly exploiting it or like are okay with that. But these men are putting their own lives in danger, their children's lives in danger, their wives' lives in danger, the public at large in danger, because they won't unpack this. And now this father, who, I don't know anything about this family. I would like to assume that most men don't want their child dead. Although Cecilia Regina did a video about that dad who left his kid in the car constantly. And that guy seemed to just not want children. Like that seemed almost intentional, or not outright intentional. I don't know. I don't think this dad wanted this to happen. I don't think most fathers would ever want this to happen. And yet, it will, because of the hubris, the overconfidence, the escapism that so many men, even the healthiest men I have seen really fall into the escapism, that learned helplessness that comes with that much privilege. With any amount of privilege, that learned helplessness thing. White women, we have it. It's not just harming the people that experience the front line of that violence, the people that are oppressed by that system, versus the oppressor also loses, even if they have all, it is so dehumanizing to everybody. But the people who have to deal with that person, whether they're married to them, birthed them, or related to them, or whatever, they will also, the person with the least amount of power will always suffer the most. And sometimes they will literally die in their backyard because dad is distracted and can't show up. Anyway, let me know what y'all think. And I've been on a break. For those of you who have been wondering, I'm really struggling with certain things, especially that were kicked up from my Anthony's grandma dying, and then my trip back home. I'm still I don't know. I'm okay, but I needed to take a break. But anyway, if you want to hear from me, no matter what, I'm always over on Patreon, and that's where I share behind the scenes stuff, personal stories, lives, watch parties, travel content, and all that stuff. And I think I'm going to actually do a survival series over there about how to exist with not much water and whatever. Go check it out if you want. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear your comments. Like, comment, share, all that stuff. And thanks for being here, and thanks for being patient with me as I took some time off. Camping out 'cause it's hard as forking. Moses taking up all the room in the tent with me. Look at him, T-Rex style. He is so cute and he sticks his tongue out sometimes when he sleeps. This is us sleeping in a tent 'cause it's hot as Fork and Leon. So we came up to Grandma's house, his grandma, my mother-in-law, and sleeping in a tent next to the garden to not die from heat exhaustion because we don't have AC. But look at this dog, he literally takes up the entire bed, and we love it up here 'cause we're not melting. That's the common song Moses taught.